Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Los Angeles Thieves walk away with the championship at Major 4 in Columbus, but it was not a championship Sunday without its controversy. Cellium with the Signal 50 sniper earlier in the day definitely raised some questions, but also Los Angeles Thieves coach Shane sitting behind OpTic in the series they played against FaZe. Should this have been allowed? Did this confer any advantage to Thieves? Hex was certainly not happy about it. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to get into. The MVP, which we didn't discuss briefly last night, was Octane. Absolute no-brainer, to be honest, over the course of this entire stage. Had a great weekend, but even what Octane brings outside of just the numbers, very impressive. He's back to that form now. We're in Search and Destroy. He's pretty good, solid enough, but it's the respawns where he comes different. And we know that Octane brings more to the team than just slaying anyway, but over the course of the stage, he was incredibly good, and I thought I definitely deserved the MVP. Now, in terms of, this isn't really too much of a surprise, but officially now, FaZe, Texas, and Thieves, I believe, after winning the event, have qualified for the World Championship with the points they gained from this time. It's now impossible for these teams to get overtaken by enough teams below them to not make champs. Obviously, this is going to happen eventually, but you know, it's basically that time of the year where these things are now getting locked in. So as Major 5 continues, in a couple of weeks' time, the qualifiers start to happen again. There will be more and more teams locking in their spot of the World Championship, but FaZe and OpTic and Thieves are quite a way ahead right now of a lot of the opposition. We'll look at the numbers here at the end of the video because there is still some fight to be had, but I believe all those three teams now have officially clinched. But it must be said that seeding is still relevant when it comes down. You want to be the number 1 seed, so you play the number 8 team, which is maybe going to be the Minnesota Rokkr, which is maybe the matchup you want in the first round, and also it confers V2 advantages throughout the entire tournament, so that's definitely what you want to see. Also, Envoy kind of, you know, personifying the Dark Prince here, looking at OpTic Gaming at the bottom of the pool, because I guess, yeah, they put them to bed somewhat in that finals. Very close fought affair. We'll discuss it more later in the day as well in terms of what OpTic might need to do to get to that next level that they seem to need to get to right now, and Scump gives a lot of credit to the guys, and of course he also did a tweet to the Los Angeles Thieves boys because they played very well, despite the fact that they've apparently been getting kind of slammed in scrims up until this point. When it mattered, they were able to get to that next level, which teams, championship winning teams, tend to do, and OpTic are 99% of the way there, but aren't quite there as of yet. Also got to mention, man, Drazah, this guy does not miss with the receipts. He has a kind of different angle on the trash talk than a guy like Scrappy does, because Scrap definitely does trash talk right, but he usually likes to trash talk the guys that maybe he beefed with in the past, certainly in the lower half of the league. And Scrap will talk trash before a series, but after the series when he won in Texas Major 3, he was on stage, you know, he wasn't really talking trash after they won. He had a bit of humility, right? And I know that there's been, okay, some OpTic fans get rubbed the wrong way by Scrappy, and you can understand why. But Drazah, when this guy wins, he's still talking trash afterwards. Like, you gotta respect it, right? Because what he goes back to here is, you remember when the OpTic versus Thieves game happened online, and it was the bounty game for 10k, and Ghosty came on the comms afterwards, like in the game chat apparently, and said free cash and all that. And our Drazah comes back and says, going in game chat after a bounty match, free cash, give me that 200k. Major 4 chaps, he says. So, I mean, man, Drazah's personality is, you get parts of it like this, but it's also the part of it that gets you these incredible performances, right? He knew he was underperforming in Major 2 this year. He really turned it around. Octane says he was calling a lot of the shots in the Search and Destroy as well. And he might well be, in the entirety of Call of Duty, the most impactful challenger's pickup, right? Because he was brought in to OpTic Gaming Los Angeles back in Modern Warfare 2019, was good that year, and since then got to stay on to Los Angeles Thieves. There's been some role changes and some roster changes over the time, but, you know, as a challenger's pickup that Drazah really was, he's been incredibly impactful for the teams he's been on, I think. Ghosty, though, a couple of years for him, we might be having a similar conversation, because another second, frustrating for OpTic for sure, getting second back-to-back, but they've got 2 more chances to go one better. I think it would have been a massive disappointment had OpTic not made the grand finals. I think this result is acceptable, but they will want to go one better, and Huke obviously reckons that they will. So he says here, GG's to everyone finished second, got a lot to look forward to, right? So, you know, they'd prefer to win champs than they would to win Major 4, certainly without a crowd, but they will need to improve somewhat, and Thieves right now are showing that they might well be the team to beat. Hex says after the fact, obviously not the result we wanted, do believe and continue to support the team onto the next one, right? So that is the intention for OpTic going forwards. Now, some controversies on the weekend, though, got to be said, as there always are in the Call of Duty world, one of which being Cellium's sniper rifle play. We saw Beans use it in the game that OpTic played right at the start of the weekend, and that was where the controversy started for many, but actually Cellium had used it online a few days prior, and Beans answers the question here, like, Cellium Cell used it in a game, then against us in a practice a week later. So we asked the GA chat, is it allowed? And there was no reply. At that point, it's not GA. So you got to say fair enough to Beans, right? Because Cell used it. Now, you know, did Cell break the GAs first? Probably did, let's be honest here. Because this Signal 50, the Barrett 50 cal or whatever, the semi-auto sniper, usually those have been kind of GA'd in COD for the last several years by the pros. They usually only use the bolt action one that is, you know, I think it makes sense to do that. So apparently it's been banned, at least by the pros, since the game came out, right at the start of the title, but maybe no one ever put it in writing anywhere. So when Cell decided to use it in a game and then use it in a practice, and Beans is like, hey, is this allowed? Like, are we allowed to use this? And nobody said anything, then including OpTic themselves, because they were kind of shocked and saying, oh, why is this allowed when Beans used it? But they didn't say anything in the chat to say that it wasn't allowed when Beans was asking whether he could use it. That's at least what he says here. So, bit of a weird one. Cellium at it again. So, I wonder whether we'll see more Signal 50 in action, because it's definitely pretty good and probably more powerful than the other one, to be honest. Some pros are going to have their preferences. I don't really mind the personal preferences, but I do think the Signal 50 is probably the better choice, but maybe some pros would disagree on that one. The other big drama, though, was around the coaching setup with the matches. So, we know the setup at the event wasn't as good as maybe it could have been. There wasn't a crowd. They weren't sitting up there kind of flat to the crowd on stage. It was like a bit of a V-shaped situation at the Belong Arenas. You know, for $500,000 on the line, it's not exactly optimal, right? And even as CDL Standings says, how are they letting coaches sit behind a team they might play in the finals, especially in Search and Destroy? And this was a very good point, and we'll see some images from it here in a second. So this is one example here of, yeah, this is Josh, right? The guy who works with the 100 Thieves guys on Los Angeles Thieves from their video content side, and we can see him sitting behind the Thieves boys while they play their series here, because that was the setup, right? These setups in the background would be for scrims, right? The teams would be sitting here and warming up, and it was a thing over the weekends. The teams would be sitting here kind of warming up and playing some games and turning around a little bit and looking at the guys playing on the main stage, as it were, which, okay, a little bit strange anyway. But then you got into a situation like this, where you've got, okay, so here the Minnesota Rokkr guys are, okay, this is Fame actually, and you've got JoeDeceives, and I believe that might be the analyst for Los Angeles Guerrillas as well. But then you've got Shane, this is coach of LA Thieves, sitting right behind the OpTic guys in the series they played up against FaZe. Now, maybe Shane should have known a little bit better than to sit here, right? Because maybe he should have predicted there could have been some controversy as a result of this. But the idea being that as in a normal tournament, right, the main stage happens, the only people that are going to be behind that team on main stage are the coach of that said team when they come up between the maps, and the referees, I guess they're sitting there as well. Usually it's not a thing where another teams and staff from another team can go up right behind a team and watch what they're doing, especially in a match setting, especially in Search and Destroy. So Shane was sitting behind these boys. Now, okay, look, at the end of the day, you can see Codcaster, if he'd have been sitting backstage watching the stream, he could have looked into, okay, what are OpTic doing in their breakoffs, all this type of stuff. But being able to see all four players' POVs at the same time, that is, you know, a different level. And also hearing their comms, that's kind of the big thing to me, is that, you know, Shane would have been able to hear, as the other guys sitting there would have been able to hear exactly how they're communicating, especially in Search and Destroy, what they do, maybe what their strengths and weaknesses are. Now, did this make any difference to the Grand Finals result? I don't personally think so, and I'll discuss why here in a second. But there definitely was a lot of controversy over Shane's situation. He did quite a lot of tweets after the event as well, saying the Champs Curse was always utter nonsense. It was a sense of fulfillment that other champions suffered with, but we are built different though. And I thought this is crazy from Brian, actually, that in all the times that a World Championship winning team had made another Grand Finals the next year, that championship winning team was 0-10 of those finals. We're talking Envy, the 2 finals they made in Infinite Warfare at the end after winning champs in 2016. Even the OpTic Dynasty, when they won in 2017, they made another finals next year at Stage 1 playoffs, lost that to FaZe. Last year, right, FaZe after winning champs lost 4 finals. So, you know, okay, a bit of a corny term, but there was some truth to it. The Thieves have managed to now successfully get through, but, you know, this is what there was a lot of talk about. So I'll just share the clip here from Hex, where this type of stuff was getting discussed and coming to light, and he was like, look, I'd like to see the VOD of that one, because definitely suboptimal that he's allowed to sit there.
Thank y'all again for joining us for the watch party here in Columbus.
That's the VOD that I wanted to see.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they're going to watch.
Anyway.
I mean, obviously they're going to watch. It's like, but thank y'all. Thank y'all again. Y'all have a great rest of your night. Fly back home tomorrow. And we'll be back at it next week. Thank y'all very much. as always.
So the question is this cheating? Did it confer any advantage upon Los Angeles Thieves? I would say the likelihood of that is very slim, because the games that OpTic were playing against FaZe, the maps they played on were not maps that they played Thieves on in the grand finals. But as MJ Dub says here, right, this is the real winners bracket advantage, that the coach of said team that won in the winners bracket gets to just sit behind the guys that lost to see what's going on. He could have sat behind FaZe, but also fundamentally the setup is at fault here, right? I don't think this is Thieves' fault. I don't really think this is Shane's fault or OpTic's fault or anything. It's the fault of the setup fundamentally. The fact that this is even allowed, that players can just, you know, coaches from another team or players from another team can just sit behind the team that's playing, really shouldn't be ideal. Now, yes, it might well happen if the teams are actually using those stations to warm up in, but, you know, just to sit there and watch from behind, I maybe think there should have been a rule against actually doing this in the first place. But it must be said, the two games that Thieves coach Shane, I think, was sitting behind them watching were, one of them was a Mikado hardpoint, one of them was a bit of a Mikado search and destroy, and you know, these two maps were not played in the grand finals. So anything Shane might have seen or might have made notes on was not relevant for their grand finals performance anyway, to be honest. So I don't think that without this OpTic are going to win or anything, but it is still a very interesting point. And Shane made quite a few comments on this. He replied to the original tweet and said, "We vetoed that map that I sat behind them on, everyone forgetting we have Codcaster where we can quite literally see everything," which, okay, that is true, but I think that, you know, Shane is maybe missing the point marginally here in terms of what people are getting at. And Shane also says we were 0-2 on the map, we vetoed it 16 times already, so we weren't going to play it anyway. So, you know, I don't think there was any real advantage gained, but I think Shane's got to realise, especially with this comment here, we vetoed the map I watched 3 or 4 rounds of, brother. The only info I relayed to my team was a certain piece of communication, which is kind of entertaining from Ghosty. But still, the idea that he's hearing the comms, he's hearing what those guys are saying, is not something that you usually get access to as a coach of another team. It's you know, in scrims, you don't get to hear the other team's comms, you don't get to see the other team's all of their individual POVs necessarily. Certainly not in a match day setting, and certainly not in Search and Destroy. So I think this is where, in future, we do go to this event again, in this venue, which we might do because, you know, we know what the CDL are like. They might do another Prime here or something like they did last year. They've got to think about trying to snuff this out, because while I don't think it really gave Thieves any edge, it's something that just doesn't look good fundamentally, and does raise questions of integrity, as, you know, Scump was on stream kind of saying, well, you know, I guess he, you know, is inclined to do it, right? Because why would you not do it if the situation was there? So definitely tweet your thoughts on that in the comment section below. As Shane says, watch them for 3 rounds on the map we knew we were vetoing, got all the info for the next 7 maps, right? So saying that, like, it didn't really matter, he sat behind it for a few rounds, and we never were going to play that map anyway, but just the idea that this is even possible, and like, this obviously got exacerbated in terms of its importance because it was OpTic. If it had been Thieves coach Shane sitting behind FaZe, I don't think anyone would have been tweeting about it as much as they were, but, you know, when OpTic are involved, everything gets amplified up to 11, and I think people are right to criticize and question whether this should actually be possible. But very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. As promised, then, these are the CDL standings. FaZe and Texas are confirmed. I think Thieves, I thought they were confirmed into making the World Championship. Maybe not quite yet. They might just be on the cusp of that. Toronto actually still above them here at 2-4-5. But regardless, those teams are separating themselves, as have the subliners, with another good top 4 placing here. Then Surge, Boston, Rokkr, and it's looking slow for Vegas, especially given their run in the Major 5 qualifiers. But very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.